Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Exploring the Lord of the Rings. This is session number 184. It is May the 4th. May the 4th be with you all. And I am glad to be back. It was sad being away last week. Well, it's not that I was sad at the time, mind. I was on vacation with my family and we were having a great time. Really good. Really the first, kind of normal, close to normal, kind of travel vacations we've had in a long time. It was really fun. Anyway, so it was all good. Sorry, just seeing the note from Hathalas there that his son was born and turned 1 during the council, during our discussion of the Council of Elrond. So there we go. But we are close, man. We are close. I'm telling you, it is still my goal. To get through the rest of the Council of Elrond by Mythmoot this year. We'll see. We'll see if that happens or not. Right, JJ says just 2 or 3 more years and we'll be done with the council. No, we are quite close. Quite close. We'll see how far we get. But in the spirit of moving right along and getting towards the end of the chapter, I want to go back to what we were talking about last time at the beginning here. But first, just a quick reminder, Mythmoot is coming up. Mythmoot, I'm getting really excited about Mythmoot. Great to be back to doing normal moots. Well, sort of normal moots. It is my hope. I've been seeing some discussions in other places and stuff. It is certainly my hope that there are going to be many long-term gains, I think, from the whole pandemic experience. And one of them is going to be, I believe, a much more robust hybrid opportunity for folks who can't physically make it. Every year there's always been, even though I've always enjoyed Mythmoot so much and it's been great to see everybody who's been able to come. I know that many people haven't been able to come. And of course, you'll remember that before the pandemic came, we had already begun to make that more accessible to folks who were not able to be there with us. It's really going to be really fun to be able to kind of take that next step and to make it into a really fully hybrid experience this coming year. And I see no reason why we're not going to do something very similar in the future as we move forward. So anyway, that's something that I am excited about, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we can do and how we can do it to make this year's Mythmoot a really wonderful experience. Now, the second thing I wanted to mention about Mythmoot is to remind you, yes, as Dorward was just mentioning, we have our Mythmoot merch available. Those, I know many people have enjoyed getting our conference t-shirts and stuff like that. We have, we'll post the link here in Discord and on Twitch if we can, but we have the we have a special merch site. So instead of one of the problems, things that we always struggled with in earlier moots was, when you're selling t-shirts on site, as has been customary at conferences, there's so much waste, because you have to, you order, you don't know what sizes to order. And so you order a whole bunch and you sell many of them, but many of them you don't. And then what do you do? It's tough. But anyway, we have now our Redbubble site. So anyone can order whatever they want in their own style and in their own sizes. And you can do that in advance. There's plenty of time to get your stuff delivered prior to the move, right? Michael says one way you handle that is you don't change your design for a decade, right? That's one method. That's one method, but not one we're fond of at Mythmoot. But anyway, yeah. So right, there's the link on the Discord channel and on Twitch for folks to be able to see. You can get your Mythmoot merch think I'm planning to come with a Mythmoot mask, so I can have a thematic mask for the week. Now, Michael asks if there's a hard registration deadline. There probably will be, Michael. This is. I'm always fighting. Always fighting. There's not been a single event we've ever done where I haven't been in like a, this like tug of war with the venue. Right? The venue always wants us to close registration as early as possible so we can say here's the definite numbers, and I always want to keep it open until the last second if at all possible. But yeah, there probably will be, but it's not for a little while yet. If you have any sort of questions or concerns, you should email info@signamu.org, and we can talk about sort of parameters when you think you might be able to. Dorward is right that it's one of the trickiest things. We have only a limited number of rooms available. That's been one of the hardest things, is that, so there are rooms on site you can stay in. Now, there are other hotels nearby, but it's really fun to be able to kind of be on site with everybody else. So yeah, the rooms are going to be sort of the greatest scarcity, I think. But any news on the schedule? Not yet, JJ, other than that I believe it to be coming soon. I know that there has been work on that. That has been in process. I don't think it's quite ready for release yet, but getting there. We are definitely moving in that direction. Very, very imminent, says Dorward. Okay, excellent. Yeah. So yeah, there are definitely. We're definitely going to be on that pretty soon. So Mythmoot, very exciting, and of course I'm already looking forward to starting up regional moots again this year. And there's another place where it's going to be really interesting, because again, another place where I'm going to want to be able to be including more people, but there it's challenging because it's not that we want to exclude people from regional moots, but they kind of cease to be regional, if like everybody can join every moot, like it's anyway. So we'll see. We'll see how we end up handling it. But yeah, so let's see. Evil Dr. Cannon, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but there have been but that we've had a bunch of live attendance registrations so far. I think I don't remember. I'm not going to quote a number because I might be wrong. But yeah, it's going to be a good time. It's also been a weird registration season because timing has been strange. But yeah, keep an eye on the Mythmoot website, and there will be updates there. Anyway, I better get back to the text if I'm going to have any hope of finishing finishing the Council of Elrond by Mythmoot, which is what I want to do. So as I said before, in the interest of that, we're going backwards. Well, we're just going to kind of pause on the thing that we were talking about last. So Terrence Aries on Twitter, I got this tweet while I was on vacation, and said, hey, remind me of this before class next Tuesday. And he kindly did. So here's his tweet. He said, in the latest episode, you keep saying, when will come the day of our revenge, where the text reads, when will the day come of our revenge? And that struck me because your way is much more natural than the published way. Any thoughts on this? I thought that was a fascinating I had no idea that I was misquoting it when I was reading it. I kept shifting it around. In my head, apparently, like I was saying it wrong. I didn't realize I was saying it wrong. But it doesn't surprise me, because I also find when will come the day of our revenge more natural. And of course it's more natural because think about the difference in the word order there, right? The difference is both the sort of the flipping of the subject and the verb, right? When will come, right? Will come being the verb and the day, right? So the day is the subject and will come is the verb. And of course it's reversed because it's a question. That's what you do, right? It's how you make a question in English. So when will come the day of our revenge? And also that impulse not to separate the helping verb and the linking verb, the helping verb and the main verb rather, it can sometimes happen. So will come, right? So the thing that the word order in the published text, the thing that the word order in the published text does there's sort of two things that it does at once, which are both unusual, right? Which make it feel, I think, as Terrence was saying, a little bit less natural. One is to half flip the subject verb order, right? Again, normally verb comes before the subject in a question. In the way that Glóin says it, when will the day come? The subject is in the middle of the verb, right? Will and day are in the kind of proper interrogative order, but come comes after day, right? Like it does in a normal statement. So, and what's more, the day, right? Your noun phrase there, comes right in the middle of, like, right between the helping verb and the main verb. So that's strange, right? It's not unknown. It's not ridiculous, but it's odd. That's definitely odd. And I can see why, when not paying attention, I kept flipping it around in my head. Exactly, Bjarnason, the way that it breaks the thing into two. Yeah, the verb phrase into two. Absolutely. Now, I like the idea. See, here's the thing. Some people are suggesting maybe the day of our revenge is like a single noun in Dwarvish. And believe me, I would not be in the least bit surprised if in Khuzdul there were a separate noun that just meant the day of our revenge, right? That would make a lot of sense. But notice, actually, that the way that the word order, the way I was accidentally misreading it would lead towards that more naturally. Right? That is, if it were true that you were rendering as a modern English phrase, the day of our revenge, if you were rendering in that way a single word or word concept from Khuzdul, well, you'd keep it together, like I was unconsciously trying to do, right? When will come the day of our revenge? But that's not how Glóin says it. So the way that Glóin says it, right. Emily says, when will our revenge day come? Yes, exactly. Yes, but what they do accomplishes two things, right? It both splits up the verb, right? Will come, and it splits up the whole noun phrase, the day of our revenge, right? Both of those get chopped up in the order in which he says it. So that's interesting. Interesting in one of those ways that I don't believe that Tolkien just kind of like plopped that down and was like, whatever, right? I mean, I think he thought about this. So I ask myself, what is the effect? So when Terrence was asking me, do I have any thoughts on this? I'm like, yeah, man, I've got a bunch of thoughts on this. My main thought is that obviously the difference is where the phrase the day, or the word day, if we don't count the article, right, where the noun day falls. And in the printed text, it moves the noun up, right? When will the day come of our revenge, instead of when will come the day of our revenge. One of the things that I find that I can't avoid is the difference in shift. Now, I'm agreeing. Well, I think I agree with the people. At least I don't disagree with the people who are saying that the of our revenge. I like the way that Turambar was just putting it. That of our revenge would have been sort of implied, but he's adding it for the benefit of the non-dwarves as an afterthought, right? Like, yes, that would kind of play in Turambar to that idea, right? That there's like a word for day, like, or the day of our revenge in Dwarvish, which he'd translate as day, right? And then like among dwarves, he wouldn't have to say anything else, right? He would just say, when will the day come? Right. And they would all know that, of course, the day in question is, the day of our revenge. So I could see, but then he clarifies, like he just pops on the prepositional phrase at the end there to kind of clarify for the non-dwarves in the room, right? And I like that reading. But again, that's not the difference in the word order there, right? The difference in the word order is where the word day comes. And by reworking it in my head unconsciously, right, into the more natural word order, which keeps the verb together and keeps the whole noun phrase together, when will come the day of our revenge, in the way that I was misreading it last time. By doing that, one of the consequences, I think, is that the emphasis falls on the verb. When will come the day of our revenge, right? Saying, in my ear anyway, when will come the day of our revenge? That's a question about coming, right? When will the day come of our revenge is a question about the day, right? It really, in my mind, lays, especially because the day has been kind of promoted in the word order. It's the word day that's in a weird place. It's in an unusual place. And as it is, since it is an unusual place, it strikes me that, again, that just, it really lays extra emphasis on that, which again, in my mind, I think it makes a lot of sense, right? It makes a lot of sense in this sort of dwarvish context. It's not the verb, it's not the coming that he's focusing on. It's the day, right? When will it come? Yeah, that's sort of what you're asking, right? But you're talking about the day. And so the way that the day, parentheses, of our revenge, right, is foregrounded there seems to me to fit. I think it's even like a stronger statement in that way, a stronger statement, a stronger sort of emphasis of, I was going to say hope, not hope, longing, perhaps, longing for the day of revenge, the day of justice, that, or at least of vengeance, which, perhaps he doesn't think will actually come. Yes, it is long delayed, Aird, you were absolutely right. Sorry, Houth Castle, I was just thinking about your comment there. I'm not sure. Houth Castle was suggesting that the shift in the word order changes of our revenge from an adjectival to an adverbial phrase. It looks like that because, of course, it's immediately adjacent to the verb, right? But I don't think so. I think it would still modify day. I don't think you can. Can you? Can you begin an adverbial phrase with of? I think all of phrases are always adjectival, aren't they? I can't think of any counterexamples to that. But anyway, nevertheless, it does kind of separate it, certainly. If it's a dwarvish word, it can, sure. Yeah. Now, Timdolf's, the dwarves had their day of revenge against Smaug. See, that's really interesting, Timdolf, because, no, in a sense, no. Smaug dies, yes. Yes, Smaug dies, right? But they don't get to kill him, though they never seem very keen on that, frankly, in The Hobbit. But, in part, I don't know. The Hobbits are strange. The Hobbit dwarves, are strange. The dwarves from The Hobbit are odd. They don't quite fit. They're the big transition point for dwarves in Tolkien's world. I think, honestly, as soon as Thorin crawls out of the barrel on the shores of the lake, Tolkien's dwarves are never the same again from that moment on. It's like they're the moment of their rebirth and emergence, right? But anyway, it seems to me like that's kind of the moment. To me, that's sort of the turning point. It's the turning point of their career. but they're still only becoming. They haven't gotten there yet. You know, there's this disjunction between the dwarves in the Hobbit and the dwarves of the earlier Silmarillion tradition. And there's, and they haven't yet fully developed into what we're going to see with Glóin, and then much more so with Gimli as we move forward. And then, of course, on into Appendix A as he is developing and working out the backstory of the dwarves. Yeah. Anyway, I just, so yeah. The whichever direction you're looking at it, whether you're looking back at the Hobbit from the Lord of the Rings, or you're looking forward at the Hobbit, from, the Quentin Olderinwa or something like that. The dwarf, Thorin and company seem like kind of bad data points. Anyway. Okay. That's all. That's all I wanted to say. But I was just, I thought it was fascinating that Terrence caught me out on misreading that. And I think it was, as soon as he mentioned it, I was thinking that's totally not coincidental. That's a significant screw up. So I wanted to talk about that. So back to the slide we were doing last time. As we are transitioning out of that, when will the day come of our revenge? We didn't get to talking too much about the three last time, and I want to look at this last paragraph as a springboard into the next slide, which is all about the three rings. So I'm going to read that last bit, and then we'll go straight into the next slide and talk about the whole thing, right? But still there are the three, he says, is still Glóin speaking. What of the three rings of the elves? Very mighty rings, it is said. Do not the elf lords keep them? Yet they too were made by the Dark Lord long ago. Are they idle? I see elf lords here. Will they not say? The elves returned no answer. Did you not hear me, Glóin? Said Elrond. The three were not made by Sauron, nor did he ever touch them. But of them it is not permitted to speak. So much only in this hour of doubt I may now say. They are not idle. But they were not made as weapons of war or conquest. That is not their power. Those who made them did not desire strength or domination or hoarded wealth, but understanding, making, and healing, to preserve all things unstained. These things the elves of Middle-earth have in some measure gained, though with sorrow. But all that has been wrought by those who wield the three will turn to their undoing, and their minds and hearts will become revealed to Sauron if he regains the one. It would be better if the three had never been. That is his purpose. But what then would happen if the ruling ring were destroyed, as you counsel? asked Glóin. We know not for certain, answered Elrond sadly. Some hope that the three rings which Sauron has never touched would then become free, and their rulers might heal the hurts of the world that he has wrought. But maybe, when the one has gone, the three will fail, and many fair things will fade and be forgotten. That is my belief. Yet all the elves are willing to endure this chance, said Glorfindel, if by it the power of Sauron may be broken, and the fear of his dominion be taken away forever. Okay. There's a lot here. This is what we're talking about tonight. So, okay. First, I want to discuss the error of Glóin. The error of Glóin that Elrond immediately calls out, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry. Genghis Galahad, which is a funny name. Glóin's word his name is definitely two syllables. That's what the accent means there. It's definitely not Glóin, and and you should be glad that it's not Glóin, because if it were, then his relative Groin on the family tree would really have gotten the short end of the stick, name-wise. But anyway, okay. Anyhow, so Glóin makes a mistake here. Now, on the one hand, On the one hand, there's been a lot said, like, hard to blame an aged dwarf who has had no lunch for making a mistake here. But I'm not 100% sure what to do with it. Here's what I mean. What of the 3 rings of the elves? Very mighty rings, it is said. Do not the elf lords keep them? Is it a question of Glóin not hearing him when he said, because he did say earlier on, he did say that that Sauron had not touched the rings here. Yeah, selective hearing in part, Druid's Fire. Yeah, exactly, Kit. That's what I'm more thinking here. That he's saying what the dwarves believe of the elf rings. Yes. And Fourth Dauntless was saying it sounds like Glóin is a stand-in for the reader here. It's a perfectly natural question for a first-time reader. It certainly is. No question. But yes, I do think that he is, and I agree. Bjorning in Exile, that he's fishing for information here. Definitely. Also, remember, he has just laid his cards on the table, right? Indeed, I may now reveal that it was partly in hope to find that ring that Balin went away, right? That we were talking about how it's a significant confidence for Glóin the dwarf, as he is called at the beginning of that paragraph, to offer, right? It's a kind of a big deal. Is he... On the one hand, he's, I think, very clearly inviting reciprocity here, right? But still, there are the 3, right? Okay, so I've talked... Now, again, he's being diplomatic, right? Once again, because he could have just led with that, right? He could have just been like, so, Elf Lord, how about those 3 rings then, right? But he didn't do that. Instead, he starts with the 7. He starts with the dwarf rings and reveals a confidential piece of information to the whole council, right? Which leads, of course, to the revelation that the ring of Durin, the ring of Durin's line has been lost, right? So it's a big deal, right? All is now known. Everybody in the room now knows the worst about the dwarf rings. The greatest secret about the dwarf rings is now been revealed, right? So he first exposes all that. He puts all that out there, right? Yes, he has been itching to ask this, I think, for a while, as we were talking about last time. But he first lays his cards on the table, and then he pushes. There are still the 3. We've talked about the 7 now. There are still the 3. What of the 3 rings of the elves? If we skip that sentence for a second, the kind of the erroneous, controversial sentence, right? Very mighty rings, it is said. Do not the elf lords keep them? Are they idle? I see elf lords here. Will they not say? All of that seems exactly perfectly natural, right? Very mighty rings. Yeah, those are a big deal. Like, you'd think they could maybe have some impact in a situation like this, right? Sauron doesn't have his ring, but we've got some rings on our side, don't we? Right? Very mighty rings. Held by elf lords. I see elf lords here. That's, by the way, one of my favorite sentences, right? I see elf lords here. Well spotted, Glóin. Well spotted. Yes, you can spot the elf lords in a room full of elf lords. But again, it's a very indirect way of saying, like, come on, spill, people, spill, right? You can't tell me that nobody in this room knows about the elf rings. In fact, he seems even. Bjorn Sonner says, "I spy with my little eye something that starts with E." Exactly. But yeah, the implication, I think, of "I see elf lords here" is at least one of y'all has to have one of the rings, right? I mean, I think he's calling out the fact that he's got to figure minimum one of the three rings is in the room right now, right? I mean, come on. If neither Elrond nor Glorfindel has one of the rings, then who does? I mean, okay, like Galadriel, worst kept secret in the Third Age, but still, clearly, right? I mean, one of them, Glorfindel and Elrond, at least one of them, maybe both, have to have one of the elf rings, right? Of course, Ray, there is Celeborn. You're so right. I'm sure, and most everyone would be assuming that Celeborn like has all three, right? Just because he's so wise and mighty. But you're right, Mad Violinist. It's a poorly kept secret to everybody but Tolkien at this point. Totally fair. But yeah. Now, of course, we do know in retrospect that two of the three rings are in fact in the room. Though I certainly think that is a secret to Tolkien at that, or a secret from Tolkien at that time. But anyway, so someone, I forgot who it was, it already went past, was pointing out the brevity of his sentences, which I agree is very striking. You look back at his previous paragraph, right? Still, it might be well for all if all these strengths were joined and the powers of each were used in league. Other rings there may be, less treacherous, that might be used in our need. All of his sentences are long and even sort of ornate, right? And then in this paragraph, what of the three rings of the elves? Very mighty rings, it is said. Do not the elf lords keep them? Are they idle? I see elf lords here. Will they not say? It is a very striking shift in diction, right? In sort of level here. I don't. I think, yeah, it does sound a little terse. Yeah. Michael, I agree. I don't think he's being rude. First of all, one thing to keep in mind that I don't want to lose sight of. I don't want to lose sight of the conclusions we were drawing about his alas at the beginning of this paragraph, right? I believe that Glóin is genuinely upset, and that alas probably is the printed representation of some kind of outcry, very possibly, in Dwarvish that Frodo didn't catch or something, that he, anyway, Glóin has just cried out in what I suspect to be completely spontaneous and wholly genuine grief and mourning. So to some extent, I think that he is still collecting himself. And so he might not be fully combobulated to construct his really long sentences. But I also think he's not wanting to. I think it is a little terse. I think it is. He's not being rude, but I think he feels, I don't know, the urge in some way to go in that direction. I see elf lords here. Will they not say? Will they not say? Is, I think, a conspicuous question at the end, right? It's not a question of like, can you not say, but are you or are you not going to make the choice to, reciprocate my openness that I was just showing to you guys now? And, everybody's been putting things on the table here, right? The Frodo, the halfling over there is shown the Ring of Power, where we're all here, Gandalf is asking, what are we going to do with it and everything? And And yet you guys are still like, we're talking about rings of power here, and no one's even mentioned the 3 rings of the elves, very mighty rings, you know. I see elf lords here. What gives? What gives? Will they not say? Exactly, Lady Lakata. The assumption is that the elves can say if they want to. Yes. Will they not say? Is really the only choice. No, so now, but I've been skipping, and I want to come back to. Yet they too were made by the Dark Lord long ago. And Kit, I think that it would be no surprise if the dwarves believed this, because of course their rings, the dwarf rings, were made by the Dark Lord long ago, right? They have had to reconcile themselves to the fact that these rings of power, which they still valued, which they still consider theirs, right? Such that Glóin cries out and is talking about the day of their revenge when he finds that the ring was taken and the ring of his people has been lost. They still very much identify with it, right, and claim it for their own. They've, had to get over the uncomfortable fact that the Dark Lord made it, and yet they claimed it for themselves. That they would assume, basically, at least assume, that the elf rings were in the same position, that they might want to, that they believed that they and the elves were on a par there, right? Makes sense. And Flammifer, I agree that the ring poem itself does sound ambiguous. It does sound ambiguous. Well, though Flammifer, hang on a second. 3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords on the the dwarf lords on their dark thrones. That's so wrong. The dwarf lords in their halls of stone. 9 for mortal men doomed to die. 1 for the dark lord in his dark throne. Huh. Yeah, JJ, exactly. I never noticed about the ring poem before. When we talked about it, we spent so much time talking about the rhythm that I neglected to notice one of the most obvious things about it. There are no verbs. I mean, there are, but there are no subjects or verbs, Bjorning. Exactly. No verbs anywhere. Whether the verb be about making or the verb be about giving or any of that. Yeah. There's no verb there at all. That is completely fascinating, right? And Sarah, you're saying, all right, let's go. Clearly we have to start again. Yeah, I agree. But see, this just goes to say you can never go slow enough. You can never go slow enough, right? You're always going to miss stuff. Always. Sorry. And now I'm just reciting the ring poem to in my head. That is completely fascinating. And yes, Flammifer, you're right that the ring verse is Elvish lore, right? So that's the elves made that. Yeah, no verbs until you get to all the verbs that Sauron is going to do. Yeah. To rule, to bind, to find. Yeah. Yeah, Matt, you're right. True. Lapilia and JJ and Mad Violence are all pointing out that the men are dying, which is a verb. Still a verb. True. Yeah. They're still not the... They are very much the victims of that action rather than the doer of it, however. But I agree, doomed to die does function as an adjective as a whole. Yeah. Well, Health Council, if infinitives don't count, then there's not a singular verb in that entire poem. Huh. I don't know if it's true that I've never noticed that before, but I've certainly never thought about it before. Fascinating. Anyway, back to here. Someone else was pointing out that yet they too were made by the Dark Lord long ago is the only declarative sentence that he makes in a string of interrogatives. Well, I see elf lords here is the other observation that he makes. And that one seems a little snarky, right? I see elf lords here. Will they not say? There are two options, it seems. One was that Glóin is making a genuine error, that he did not like that business about Sauron not touching them went over his head. Or he's stirring it up a little bit here. I don't want to totally abandon the stirring it up hypothesis, but I can certainly see how the first one would come to be. If it were accepted as a standard part of dwarvish lore, that they would know about the elf rings and the human rings as well as the dwarf rings. They know that the dwarf rings were given to them by Sauron. But they've kind of made peace with that fact. They know that the human rings were given to the humans by Sauron, but of course those weak humans capitulated, right? They were corrupted by them, like the dwarves weren't, obviously, right? That just kind of goes to show that they would assume that the elves, at least assume, if not actually kind of twist the story into believing that the elves were in the same position, right? That the elves, like the dwarves, were given the rings by Sauron. It's possible that he does think it's sort of propaganda, elvish propaganda, as Fourth Dauntless says. Yes, I think that's possible. Bjorning in Exile, that's exactly what I'm kind of leaning towards myself, actually. That yet they too were made by the Dark Lord long ago. Elrond gets all indignant, or sounds kind of indignant. Did you not hear me, Glóin? The three were not made by Sauron, nor did he ever touch them. Okay. But I did hear you, Elrond. See, because here's what I want to say. Are the three rings uncorrupted? Are they truly uncorrupted? I'm not convinced of that. I'm not disbelieving Elrond. I'm not even saying that Elrond is, believes himself to be correct but is mistaken. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that that project, Celebrimbor's Ring of Power project, was still done in collaboration with Sauron. Sauron was still playing him. And I think that there's reason to think that the three rings are still a bad idea. Still a bad idea despite the fact that Sauron did not himself actually make them. Not only that, There's another sense in which what Elrond says is, I think, not true. Nor did he ever touch them. Well, physically, no. But his power does touch them, as Elrond goes on to confess, as Kelebrimbar was aware of from the first moment that Sauron made the One Ring. Sauron's power reached out to encompass and control and dominate the three rings of the elves, right? Sauron did touch them. Sauron could have touched them, and if Sauron gets his ring back, then he will touch them for sure. Touch them and those who wield them, right? So and Finn, whether or not they're actually made to Sauron's recipe itself, I can imagine that Celebrimbor's work. I mean, Sauron. It makes me think of Melkor and Feanor, right? And Melkor trying to say that, Feanor in making the Silmarils had been like taking his advice, right? Melkor trying to kind of indirectly lay claim to the Silmarils, which we're told is a lie by the impartial Elvish narrators, right, of that story. Watson, I agree that the rings may not be corrupted, but they're certainly compromised. Yes. So I do think there's... Remember the context, right? Remember the context. This is all coming up in response to Elrond's big speech to Boromir and everybody, right, about the One Ring and how they can't possibly use the One Ring. That's got to be off the table, right? That option has to be completely off the table. And Glóin had just said other rings there may be less treacherous that might be used in our need. And he seems to be, in his mind, firmly putting the three rings also in the category of less treacherous rings. Not safe rings, not untreacherous rings, right? Is he simply mistaken, right? Is he kind of recycling dwarf lore, which turns out to be incorrect, and so he was kind of didn't really hear that part because he thought he already knew, right? It's possible. I think it's very possible, but I do wonder if Glóin here is not just simply mishearing Elrond, but actually throwing shade here, right? Because by Elrond's own account, there's something sketchy. There's something sketchy about the three rings, right? Elrond says they are not idle, but they are not made of weapons of war or conquest. That is not their power. Those who made them did not desire strength or domination or hoarded wealth, but understanding, making, and healing to preserve all things unstained. These things the elves of Middle-earth have in some measure gained, though with sorrow. Why? Why? Why with sorrow? I think I've always kind of assumed that he's looking forward to the sorrow that he believes is going to come, right? But I don't think so, because that's what he's moving on to in the next sentence. But all that has been wrought by those who wield the three will turn to their undoing. These things that the elves of Middle-earth have in some measure gained, though with sorrow. And Stunned Duck, I absolutely agree that the reference to hoarded wealth is a bit of reflecting some of that shade back onto Glóin. Right? Yeah, definitely. Now, I agree, Evil Dr. Cannon, that to be in Middle-earth is to experience sorrow, and the rings have prolonged their time in Middle-earth. Yes. I mean, prolonged in the sense that inspired them to stay instead of leaving to return to Elvenhome. Yes. Yes. And yes, they've had sorrow. I mean, yes, to be alive in Middle-earth, you know, even if you're an elf, especially if you're an elf in some sense, is to have sorrow, right? Here's what I'm trying to figure. I'm trying to figure, is he suggesting that there is sorrow intrinsic in the action of the three rings? That they have brought about sorrow? That, like, sorrow has been a side effect of the working of the three rings? Or has he just said, it's been great, but, you know, it still can't cure the sorrow of Middle-earth or anything, right? Like, they've helped us to achieve understanding, making, healing, preserving all things unstained, right? We've been able to do those things. But you know, we still have sorrow anyway. But it sounds to me that he's saying more than that, though with sorrow. Exactly, Finn. It could be that he's saying, and yet sorrow still exists. But I don't know. I really think it is possible to take that sentence as meaning their sorrow is greater for having used the rings than it would have been had they not used the rings. Ragnar, it's very possible that the futility of trying to preserve things unstained brings sorrow. Even if they succeed, like, say, within their little enclaves, right? Because they cannot heal all of the wounds of Middle-earth, right? They can't. But, you know, so even if you establish your nice little elf havens at Rivendell and Lothlorien, the very contrast, right, between this unstained world that you're preserving in your little area and the world around it is going to bring more sorrow, right? It's going to make it more and more obvious that you cannot, in fact, because notice, what are they trying to preserve unstained with the three rings? All things, right? And they can't do that. These things the elves have in some measure gained, you know, to some extent. That's a fascinating way of putting it, Green Great Dragon. Are the three rings hoarding bliss? They're not hoarding power. They're not hoarding wealth, but they're hoarding bliss. And Green Great Dragon, that's an issue, right? I mean, like, that's a known issue. There's a lot of bliss hoarding that goes on in the history of Middle-earth, isn't there? Lots. I mean, this is whether you go back to, you know, whether you look at the elf realms of the Third Age, or you go back to Doriath, or you go back to Valinor, or, I mean, Gondolin. Exactly. I mean, there are lots and lots of examples of hoarded bliss. And Mad Violinist, I totally agree that the Valar taught the elves to do that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the reasons why I still believe, and I hope no one will think I'm speaking with the tongue of Melkor when I say this, that the Valar made a mistake, that they were wrong when they brought the elves to Valinor. Yeah. Quit bogarting the bliss, Celeborn. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It may be that, yeah, Bjorning in Exile. Yeah, I know Tolkien talks about the Valar being wrong about that. He flip-flops a bit. I was quoting, there's this shocking line in Morgoth's Ring that we discussed last fall when in one of the revisions, the narrator of the text like busts out and says, like, there are some who say that the Valar, were wrong, that they did wrong, but anyone who says that speaks with the tongue of Melkor. And I was like, whoo, okay, all right, no further questions. But anyway, yeah. What I'm thinking about here, I'm trying to get the tone of Elrond's response as a whole, of his characterization of the work of the Three Rings. Because some of this, of course, we've already talked about. They're not desiring strength or domination, understanding, making, and healing to preserve all things unstained. It's the preservation. It's that last part. Understanding, okay. Making, sure. Healing, great. Preserving all things unstained. Now, here we have a problem, right? If they had stopped at understanding, making, and healing, now it's not to say that there's no potential problem with that, right? I mean, there's no accident that those who have fallen the furthest, those who become the greatest of all of the villains, are the greatest makers. Yeah, exactly. Nancy's just pointing out that making can get you into trouble. It can, but it's not evil on its own. It's not a shady operation. You can have too much of a good thing, right? Or at least it's a potential issue. But it's the preserving of all things unstained that I think really points to the problem. And I can't help but wonder if the sorrow that he alludes to is some kind of recognition that it's not okay, that it's not right, that it can't go on. No, Sauron didn't ever touch the Three Rings. But are they not the product of the Dark Lord too? No, the elves did not desire strength or dominion or hoarded wealth, and he knew that. That's not how he was trying to get to the elves. If Elrond doesn't see that, I'm not sure Glóin isn't right here. Well, see, for Thoughtless, I can almost agree with you there. For Thoughtless says, I read that preservation line as an attempt to roll back original sin, to restore the world to the state as it should have been. Healing, yes, could point in that direction. But no. The world was already stained. There is nothing for them to preserve unstained, or if they believe that they can unstain the world, like as a verb, not as an adjective, but as a verb, right? And they have to unstain it, to destain it, right? That's asking a lot. The Valar can't do it, right? So I think they could tell themselves that, and yeah, you're right. The elves never experienced Arda unmarred, GDC. That's exactly correct. And yes, Arda marred cannot be unmarred. Not even the Valar can do it. Yeah. So if they're trying, it's you can say it's a good impulse, but it would be very seriously stepping outside their bounds. Yeah. Well, for Thoughtless, I I partially agree with you there. You say, I'm not so sure Sauron would have judged the elves rightly. Gandalf will later say that Sauron knows, he measures all things in the scales of his malice. Yes, I agree. I agree. And I don't think that in the end, he failed. In the end, he failed. Sauron failed, right? Kelebrimbar didn't fall for it. Kelebrimbar remained free, and Kelebrimbar did the right thing. If Sauron had a plan, and I believe he did, right? The plan that Sauron had with the three rings did not work. At least it didn't work perfectly, right? It did not bring about the fruit that he wanted that plan to bear. So to that extent, for Thanatos, I totally agree. I mean, you're absolutely, like, it's proven in that sense that Sauron did not really nail it. I think that Celebrimborr passed the test in the end. But I think he had moments, right? I think he had moments. I think that, yeah, he did not accomplish what he wanted to accomplish, and very likely, and clearly he did, still underestimate Celebrimborr to some extent. But that doesn't mean he's completely wrong, right? It doesn't mean that he's completely, that he had no idea, in a sense, right? Like what he was doing. That he just tried to tempt them with something that would not be tempting at all to them, right? I think it's clearly a temptation. I mean, I would go so far as to say it seems to me fairly clear that the Rings of Power, period, all of the Rings of Power, the entire Rings of Power project was a bad idea. This was a bad idea. This was a terrible idea, right? This was a terrible idea. And the three rings, I think, are not less of a terrible idea than the others. Good. Kurtzimus is saying, I think where the three rings failed is when the elves keep them to themselves. Gandalf is the only one who uses the ring correctly. Yeah, sure. Does that have to do with the sorrow too? Right? Is that why the elves of Middle-earth have gained these things in some measure, though with sorrow? Is it tainted? Do they feel it to be tainted, in a sense? Or even their success, even the beauty and the bliss that they have succeeded in hoarding, can they not really enjoy it? Because they know it's wrong on some level? I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how self-aware Elrond is on this point. I'm really not. I gotta say, Elrond's initial reaction, did you not hear me, Glowin? He's a little testy there. The three were not made by Sauron, nor did he ever touch them. Okay, Elrond. A little sensitive on this point, aren't we? Right? No. My ring is not corrupt. You take that back, right? Of them it is not permitted to speak. Not permitted. By whom? Who's forbidden him? Of them it is not permitted to speak. Several of you are making my precious jokes about Elrond, and yeah, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Right? I mean, which by the way, the maybe we shouldn't underestimate the full significance of what Círdan the Shipwright did in giving up his ring to Gandalf, right? We were just talking about Gandalf being the only one in the end who really uses his ring sort of properly, right? Maybe that's why. Maybe Círdan deserves a lot of props for that. Maybe Gandalf is in part enabled to do that because Círdan gave it up, right? Gave it up in that same way. Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. Anyway, but yeah, JJ, I like your comment. You know, it is not permitted by me, right? Yeah, I mean, it's who's whose higher authority is he responding to? I mean, okay, they've agreed that they won't talk about it, which is as much to say in response to Glowin's question, will they not say? Answer, no, they will not. They do not choose to do so. Yeah, yeah. Is it possible because Gandalf is a Maya? See, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is that we've got lots of counterexamples here. Like being one of the Maiar does not mean you're making good choices with rings, right? I mean, like even apart from the Sauron example, which is fairly obvious, there's Saruman, right? I mean, Saruman pretty much disproves the idea that the Astari, just because they were originally Maiar, are on a different level as far as their relationship to the rings is concerned. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Bjorning was just thinking about that too. Yeah. And you're right. You're right, Nancy. That Círdan is right up there with Farmer Maggot. Totally agree. Okay. Yeah, I agree, Finn. Farmer Maggot would have been a great wielder of an elven ring, I think. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. But all that has been wrought by those who wield the three will turn to their undoing. And their minds and hearts will become revealed to Sauron if he regains the one. See, that's fascinating. Will turn to their undoing. I think the first very many times I read this passage, I don't remember when I finally noticed that this was not correct, but I know it was very, very late in my reading of the in my reading of the passage. I always read that as basically saying, like, basically all that has been wrought by those who wield the three will be undone, is I think how I'd always kind of read it in my head, right? That like all the good that has been accomplished by the three rings is going to get unaccomplished, right? We'll all be wrecked and ruined if Sauron regains the one. But of course, it's not what he says. He says, all that has been wrought will turn to their undoing. That is, to the undoing of those who wield the three. And their minds and hearts will become revealed to Sauron. Now, their minds and hearts being revealed to Sauron seems enough to bring about their undoing, right? But I really wonder what the first half of that sentence means. All that has been wrought by those who wield the three will turn to their undoing if Sauron regains the ring. That he will be able to corrupt them through what they've done, like that he will twist them. Lothlorien, right? Lothlorien itself is going to be the undoing of Galadriel if Sauron regains the one. Yeah, I don't know what that means. Bobby, it could mean the rapid Mirkwoodification of Lothlorien, that he gains control over what the rings have wrought, and so he would gain control over their lands and be able to twist their lands against them. But see, I don't know. I tend to think it's a little bit more vague than that. Less about the works, like it's not about the Malorn trees themselves so much as that greater preservation of all things, you know? You will preserve all things unstained, but you will wish that it had not been so. Sorry, I'm thinking inescapably for a moment of Diggory's apple at the end of The Magician's Nephew, and Aslan telling him what would have happened, just what Aslan always says he doesn't do. Tells Diggory what would have happened had he stolen one of the apples and taken it to his mom. I'm not going to talk about that more because it's not relevant. You can't do that. That is, you can't go to a C.S. Lewis story to explain a Tolkien story. They're not the same. But anyway, sorry, I just couldn't help but think of that. Bjorning in Exile says, so maybe the bearers of the three have been influenced by their rings to the same degree as Frodo is wraithified. So Sauron converts the connection of the three to the rings to wraithification near instantly. I don't think he can wraithify them, like Elrond and Galadriel necessarily. But Bjorning, that's exactly the direction that I was kind of thinking. And when I was saying it's not necessarily about the trees, like it's not necessarily about the actual works that they've done, that like, you know, the power of the valley, like, you know, Sauron is going to make a flood come and turn against Elrond, right, in Rivendell. It's not just outward material things like that. But yes, I was thinking more generally about all that has been wrought by those who wield the three will turn to their undoing. That is, if I could rephrase this, it will turn out to be their undoing that they wrought things with the three elf rings, right? That the kind of power that will give. So remember, Kelebrimbar. How does Kelebrimbar foil Sauron's plan? By taking off the ring, right? He does off his ring as soon as he is aware of Sauron's forging of the one, right? But think about it. He hadn't been wearing it for very long. He didn't have a connection with that ring. He had not yet had time to, you know, do much with it. They have. Elrond and Galadriel are now bound to these rings much more than Kelebrimbar ever had a chance to be, right? And maybe in that sense, Bjorning in Exile, Sauron, it will lead to their undoing. They will be subject to him in ways like are they going to be able to just take off their rings and then be immune to his control? It doesn't sound like it, right? Elrond says their minds and hearts will become revealed to Sauron if he regains the one, right? Whether they take their rings off or no, right? So yeah, that's when I said something more vague, you know, more kind of abstract, that's definitely the kind of direction that I was thinking about. It would be better if the three had never been. That is his purpose. Now that does make it sound like he is going to gain control over the things, the works that they have done. So yes, there I can see more of an argument for, like, as someone was suggesting, the Mirkwoodification of Lothlorien, for instance, right? That where the the unstained influence of Galadriel was spread throughout the forest before suddenly the power of Sauron will now be equally spread throughout the forest. Yes. But I think it's going to mean their personal undoing too. Not only their kingdom's undoing, not only the reversal of the work. Yeah. Yeah. Imladris would become an unhomely house. Yes, a very unhomely house indeed. Drowsnake, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that he would gain control. Again, I don't think it's wraithification. I don't think they would become wraiths. Kurtzima says, is it because they've expended themselves through their rings? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Sorry, Kurtzimus, the reason I'm pausing there for a second is I'm wondering, could that be why they've gained these things with sorrow? That it's cost them? Yeah. I don't know. I don't see it. I mean, if anything, Galadriel's danger is not that she is going to lessen herself by dispersing her power through her land, but rather that she's gonna not lessen herself, right? That she's not gonna she's gonna refuse to diminish and go into the West. Yeah, exactly, Trifle. She says I'll diminish and go into the West after she's made the choice, right? Yeah. Oh, I totally agree with that, Nancy. Nancy, thinking of some horrible kinds of preservation. Zombies, maybe vampires. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You want to preserve all things unchanged? Okay. Yeah, we can arrange that. That Lothlorien under the power of Sauron, who had the One Ring, could become. Remember, he's the necromancer, right? Could become this land of living death. Yeah, yeah. No, I could see that. Kind of like that, actually. Right, Heir of Numenor, exactly. The risk with Galadriel always is that she's going to biggin herself instead of lessening herself. Exactly. That's exactly right. Yes. Right, instead of Barrow Whites, you'd have Malorn Whites. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, um, right, like the Neapolitan soldiers that Strange brings back to life. Right, yeah, Jonathan Strange. You mean in the novel? Yeah, yeah. Old man Malorn. Oh man, oh man. Um, yeah, yeah. Um, wasn't Celebrimbar diminished because of the three? Was he? We know very little about Kelebrimbar, man. I don't know. I don't know whether he was or not. All I know is that I can't think of any definite example where that happens to elves, you know? Where elves make things and it lessens them. It seems to be a different dynamic. Yes, subcreation doesn't diminish, only domination diminishes. Yes, yes. What diminishes Melkor is not making things, It's asserting his dominion over things. He has to disperse his spirit, his will, into matter in order to retain the kind of control over it that he wants. Right? Feanor's mum? Well, that's a tricky subject, Frumius. Yeah. Let's just say that Muriel's a bad data point. I'm not going to make any proofs based on that case. Yeah. But see, I don't think that having a great work that you can only accomplish once means that you've lessened yourself, Fort Dallas. I really don't. Is Yavanna lessened by having made the tree? She says she can't do it again, but that's not the same thing as saying that she is lessened because of it. Yeah, I don't think that those are the same at all. But anyway, so I don't see any reason to believe that the elf rings work that way, that they cause you to expend yourself in the way that Sauron does expend himself, and that Melkor did clearly expend himself. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go on with Elrond here. What then would happen if the ruling ring were destroyed as you counsel? Asked Glóin. Asked the still pretty patient Glóin, who's just gotten the hand to the face, right? I mean, he just laid his cards on the table and said, will they not say? And then Elrond said, no, we will not say. And is not permitted to speak. People are like, well, that's probably the White Council. Yeah, and there's a quorum of the White Council present in the room, for crying out loud. So I don't take that as an excuse either. So what am I saying? Am I saying that I think it's sketchy? That I think it's a bad sign that Elrond won't reveal it? I don't know. Maybe I am saying that. I don't know that I want to go quite that far. Is there wisdom in maintaining the secrecy of the elf rings? Yes. I mean, I think there's definitely wisdom in it. I don't think that they're just being greedy. I don't think that they're just showing their corruption in doing that. But yeah. Glóin, though, notice that Glóin doesn't just take it. He doesn't just not rise to the fact that he's just been refused, that the elves have refused to reciprocate. But he's top spinning Elrond's own statement back to him, right? But then what would happen if the ruling ring were destroyed as you counsel? Is there an element of, so what are you elves up to here? It would be better if the three had never been. That is his purpose. So why then are you arguing exactly that the ruling ring should be destroyed? Because again, going back to the options, right, to hide the ring forever or to unmake it, Elrond has just said what would happen if Sauron regains the One. These horrible things would happen if Sauron regained the One. But taking the ring to Mordor to cast it into the fire is taking a very great risk that he will indeed regain the One. The chucking it into the ocean plan seems a better plan than that, if the goal is merely to play keep away, right? If we want the highest odds that Sauron is not going to get his hands on the ring, the chucking in the ocean plan seems better than the let's take it into Mordor plan, right? So is Glóin probing a little bit here? You advised us, Elrond, to destroy the ruling ring. Out of curiosity, what would happen there? What would be the result of that? And Elrond answers sadly that they don't know for certain. Some hope that the three rings which Sauron has never touched, let me emphasize again, would then become free, and their rulers might heal the hurts of the world that he has wrought? But maybe, when the one has gone, the three will fail, and many fair things will fail and fade and be forgotten. That is my belief. Elrond does hear, yes, JJ, I agree. I think in the end, Elrond comes around and is reciprocally open with Glóin, right? Let me lay it on the table for you, Glóin. What I am suggesting, you think about Appendix A and what Appendix A says about the whole, lose-lose situation in a sense, right, of the War of the Ring for Elrond. It's lose-lose all the way round, in one sense, right? If they send the ring to Mordor, as he has suggested, either, very likely, Sauron will recover it, which is a disaster, or the three rings will fail, many fair things will fade and be forgotten, also modestly disastrous, right? But less disastrous than the other one. He here reveals that they're taking, not only that he's willing to take a gamble on very serious consequences happening to himself personally, but though he hasn't confessed that element of it, but he's also saying that even if we do the thing that I am suggesting, I have nothing to gain from this. I believe that I have nothing to gain from this. Here's my theory. My theory is Elrond can hear that Glóin is pushing a little bit, that there's a little bit of, I think, in my opinion, perfectly justified suspicion in Glóin's question. What would happen if the ruling ring were destroyed as you counsel? What are you up to? What do you have to gain from this? And Elrond says, some hope that the three rings which Sauron has never touched would then be free, and their rulers might heal the hurts of the world that he has wrought. That's, I think, what Elrond, suspects that Glóin suspects, right? That the elves would profit by this. This is our chance, the elves' chance. Better to throw everything else on the hazard, right? Let's take a gamble on destroying the one ring, because, man, if we can destroy the one ring, then the three rings will be free, and we'll be able to heal the hurts of the world, aka turn the world into an elf paradise, right? No problems. Is that your plan, Elrond? Is this to benefit the elves? Are you trying to, if his regaining the ring is going to create this problem, you're trying to clear yourself of that problem, right? And so Elrond first seems to sort of acknowledge, yeah, some might say that, some might think that, but I don't. Here's what I think is going to happen. If we succeed in doing what I am suggesting we do, we elves are going to lose everything that we have. Everything that we have in Middle-earth is going to fade and be forgotten. That's what I think will happen if we destroy the ring. And that, I think, that's what seems in the end to satisfy Glóin, right? Even though Elrond has not admitted it, right? Even though he is not, he's not confessed that he has a ring. He's not, he's pretending, not pretending, that's too harsh a word. He's suggesting that there's some higher power that is not permitting him to speak of the presence of the three rings. But he is making it pretty clear. This is not to their advantage. In fact, it's only, the good outcome here is merely the second worst outcome for the elves, really. And then notice this is when Glorfindel comes in. Yet all the elves are willing to endure this chance, if by it the power of Sauron may be broken and the fear of his dominion be taken away forever. It's worth it. All the elves are willing to endure this chance. We all throw in on this. No elf is arguing against it for this reason. And this really strengthens Elrond's position. Right, Tormar is wondering how many elves exactly Glorfindel has polled in making this claim. I think that... right, yeah, JJ's wondering that too. No, I don't think that he's necessarily polled all of the elves in saying this. I think it does. Sorry, I just saw Nancy's comment. Who's sitting on Galdor during this speech? Oh, man, poor Galdor. Right, Bjarna's Hunter says, we polled the wise. No one else matters. Yeah. Though Lady O'Connor points out that they have had time to ask them all. They could have been quite quite thorough. Yes. But Matt, I agree. Would you want to be the one who disagrees with Glorfindel? Yeah, Matt, you're right. There's almost like this implication. Yet all the elves are willing to endure this chance. Aren't we, elves? Yes, sir. Willing to endure the chance. Yes, sir. That's just what we are, Glorfindel, sir. I would agree with Glorfindel, too. I don't know. It does suggest, somebody was mentioning this before, and I agree, it does suggest the elves have been discussing this, right? This has been, they're not having to make a spontaneous call here. The elves are all willing to endure this chance. They know, they've discussed this. There has been the theory that the rings will become free. Elrond does not believe that it is true, and he's in a pretty good position to know. I've always wondered. I wonder what Elrond's experience of having the One Ring in his house is. Can he feel it? Can he sense it? Is there... I mean, I know it's not being wielded by Sauron, nor is it even really being wielded by somebody who fully claims it as his own. But I wonder, if what kind of intangible relationship he has with the ring. Yeah, exactly, D-Schwab. Yeah, no, it's not being really entirely wielded right now, but still, it's there. It's right there. Yeah, I agree, Druid's Fire. He certainly gets at least a +1 dread when he's around it, no question. Anyway, okay. For Thoughtless, I agree. It's got to be a pretty significant temptation. Another thing which is played down, right? I will not take the ring to wield it, he said. And that's pretty significant. There has to be some temptation there. Definitely. Turenbar says, in my head, Glorfindel will from now on be glaring at Galdor across the table in this scene. All the elves are willing to endure this chance. Yes. Yeah, I know Gandalf couldn't really tell, but see, he could. A shadow fell on his heart. He didn't know what it meant, right? But he did feel something about the ring, right? He didn't know what it meant. He didn't know what it was. He didn't know how to interpret it. But Gandalf does testify that the ring gave him a funny feeling from day one. So yeah, I think I and no, like he was feeling foreboding. He was feeling, a shadow on his heart doesn't just mean that necessarily, but still, if you tell me that Gandalf hasn't felt it, I will not respond by saying, but Tolkien didn't figure out that Gandalf had a ring yet. I will say instead, sure, he felt it. He totally had a bad feeling about this, Catriona, to be more apt to the day. Absolutely. Okay, so T. Schwab says, is Galor more afraid of Mordor's armies invading the Havens or of Glorfindel? I know which one I would be afraid of more if I were sitting in that room right then. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. Glorfindel emphasizes here the breaking of the power of Sauron is more important, right? That the fear of his dominion be taken away forever. We are willing to endure this chance. Chance is interesting, right? This is also Glorfindel saying Elrond has a good and well-grounded theory, but it's not proven, right? Maybe it'll turn out better than we think, right? But nevertheless, even if it were to be true that many fair things will fade and be forgotten, it would be worth it. It would be worth it to do. And here he's basically coming around and backing up what Gandalf said before, right? It's not up to them to take thought just for a day, right? It's they should try to make they should try to make an end, even if they don't hope to make one. So we will see. What happens, because of course our next discussion from here is going to hope and despair and wisdom and folly, right? As we evaluate, let's really think through. Can we think through the cost-benefit analysis here? Can we really, let's apply some, let's do a SWOT analysis or something and try to figure out, if this is really the best strategic plan that we can be making at this particular moment. That's where we will go next. So with that, I'm going to end only a little bit late. And we got through an entire slide and a paragraph. Thank you very much. So thanks for joining me for our text discussion tonight. Tune in next time when we think through the decision, when we return back to this question of destroying the ring in the fire. Thank you all for joining me, and it is time to great. It is time to do our field trip. Oh, hang on a second. There we go. Gotta make it redraw my screen here. There we go. All right. And unfortunately, Valori couldn't be here with us tonight because she's having weather down by her. There were storms and her internet got knocked out earlier today. So I knew she wasn't going to be able to be with us here today, but we're going to return up there to the north, to the Wells of Langflood. And I'm going to go back to Limlock. Let's meet up at Limlock and we can ride out from there. Lady Lakata, yes, she's where the tornado warnings were. She was texting me earlier, and she's like, well, the good news is it doesn't look like we're going to get hit by a tornado. But, so, yes, she was in the middle of that roughness over there this afternoon. And she was without both power and internet for a while. I think power might have come back, but her internet was still dodgy. So...
Speaking as a former ISP employee, internet is always dodgy after a storm of that magnitude.
Yeah.
Good evening, it's Druid's Fire.
Good evening, Druid's Fire.
Being a substitute companion.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate your coming in. So, it's time to go back to Sundergrot.
We're gonna have fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there were some folks on low-level characters in the lore hall. Unfortunately, I did not feel comfortable adding them in because they would not be able to port here anyway.
Right, they're going to die horribly, right, and would not be able to port here. Yes, it is one of the downsides. Like the upside, I guess we can take off here. The upside of exploring places like this is that I've never been here before, and I'm exploring things that I've never seen, and that's always really fun. But the downside is that yes, it's level 100. What is this? A level 135 area? Sorry,
Level 120 plus.
120? Oh, well, see, there we go. I'm on level
Plus.
for this area.
No, you're not.
I'm 120. I'm a wuss, but I'm 120.
It'll be fun as long as you stay near me. You'll be able to take advantage of shield wall.
Oh,
and I'll
yeah,
take
no
all your
problems.
damage.
No problems. Yeah, so I want to go back to the strikingly blue Sundergrot that we found, which is really fun. So we're headed back to the dwarf bridge. And I was pretty sure that on the upper side from that dwarf bridge, we would find some kind of nice schmancy Moria outlet place where the dwarves, some kind of trade entrance into Moria, because it seemed fairly clear that this bridge was originally constructed in the pre-Balrog period, before Moria was abandoned. And we had been speculating likely to, for trade routes across Mirkwood, especially with the Kingdom of Rovanian, if not with the Elves of Mirkwood, for trade, I mean. And this bridge did not look like a super old bridge. Like it didn't look like a... Oops. Sorry, I thought I could go under there because I have to go around.
Nope.
Okay. So, yeah, it definitely looked like a third age bridge to me. So therefore was expecting to find a dwarf ruin up here, which indeed we did. And there's stuff over there, but I'm not going to look at that yet because we'll get there eventually.
Patience, grasshopper.
Because I want to go back up. Oh, there's a warg. Okay, so I made it all the way to here without aggroing anything. Which is why I was like zigging around and running into trees and stuff before. Okay. Now...
We all do that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, also steering and talking at the same time is not my best skill. But, so hang on, I'm looking at it from a distance first. So from a distance, we can see how much it is attached to the side of the hill, right? This is not a freestanding thing. This is not a fortress on a hill. This is highly defended outlets from the hill, right? That's pretty clear. So again, that's what I more or less expected, that we were going to be finding this kind of, Moria outlet up here. Now, we got as far as the bridge last time, and I kind of tried not to look at it too carefully. But...
And to me, it's a little bit fascinating because you're seeing this out of order.
Right.
Even though it's in order for you, it's out of order for gameplay. So the rest of, you're fascinated by these blue walls, and we're like, yeah, we've been there, done that.
Right, right. Yep. It is true. And I'm assuming you're probably referring to... I mean, there's a lot of dwarf content I have not seen in the game, because I have not done the northern Mirkwood and the Iron Hills. So there's a lot of dwarf content that I have not seen yet. Okay. All right. So blue and gold. Lots of gold overlay. Now, the first thing we can notice is that there's been some reconstruction of this bridge. It looks a little bit less wonky, doesn't it, than the bridge we just crossed over, which was also reconstructed?
Yeah, and there's a lot of goblins on the other side, by the way.
Okay. Right now, yes, I see them. I guess this is still probably, I mean, it's raw enough to be goblin construction. But it does look sturdier, doesn't it, Lady Wakata? I mean, it's just, it doesn't look as crude as goblin stuff normally. I mean, it doesn't look dwarf make either, but, I mean, it is interesting that it is a little sturdier. Whereas you compare it to, you know, their other works. I mean, like, look down here, for instance, at, like this little tent here, right? Or that stand over there, you know, this, like lookout stand here.
Yeah, they did seem to, the goblins here did seem to start building a bit more in a sturdy and less harsh and crude fashion.
Yeah, it's though, you know, I admit this stand looks a little less rickety than I expected it to look. Like the boards are kind of squared off, right? It's not just, they're not just raggedy off the side. The posts are all like of a length and stuff. It's got these awkward props and things sticking in, which is a little sloppy. But it's not, I mean, I could easily believe that those who made this little watch stand also made that bridge. Though, see, this tent is exactly more like the kind of thing, these tents, I should say, sticks tied together with ropes and with skulls hanging off them, is more like goblin make that I've come to expect.
Right, but they're still a little bit more refined. I mean, the poles, the sticks are straighter. They're not just hacked off. So it seems as maybe there's two different groups going on here.
Maybe.
Like one who's doing a little bit more refined work, and then a group that's taking a little less pride in their craftsmanship.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. All right, well, I'm not going to head down that way yet. But I've been looking at all the goblin workmanship and haven't been looking at the dwarf workmanship yet. But this is so... Look at the asymmetry again, like we were noticing before. This star, which is in the middle but set off on the side so that it's half eclipsed by the edge of the arch there.
Right.
Yeah. Though they're symmetrically asymmetrical on either side here, which is kind of fun. Which suggests there's like a larger pattern. If I back up until I fall off the cliff, maybe I'll see it.
Or back up till you're on the bridge.
Yeah. Right, okay, so those two posts would have been symmetrical, but it broke off. Yeah, this too, I mean, it looks, the stone looks so much cleaner, and this gold, I mean, like the gold overlay.
Could it be like brass or
It
bronze,
could be
but
brass.
wouldn't have that oxidized over time?
Well, that's why I was thinking gold, because gold does not oxidize so much over time. But
it kind of also implies that the fact that goblins and orcs don't really care about gold that much, because if they did, they would have scraped it all off or otherwise looted it.
I mean, yeah, that is interesting. I don't remember seeing anything like this, you know, Star of David with rose inside, you know, that we see here.
I don't know, it feels a bit Khazad-dûm to me, but
Maybe it is.
maybe alternative.
Maybe it
And
is.
Tomas says maybe it's just pyrite.
Right, the gold? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, possibly. But I don't know that a goblin or orc would necessarily know the difference between the two. They would just see the color and go,
Maybe. Yep, Emily, I'm looking forward to exploring Moria.
Yep. Yeah, as
It is
opposed to the time we
possible.
shotgun Grifflet through it.
Yeah, exactly. It is possible that Moria exploring, we will have enough to do exploring Moria to keep us occupied during the entire time that we're reading the Moria text. It is possible that we will not run out of exploration before we run out of text. There. One of the few places in the game that can stand up to equal levels of scrutiny. But we'll see how that goes. So just looking at the designs.
Yeah, Emily is correct. Scarhold is the place I was obliquely referring to.
Mm-hmm.
Where we first see this blue stone as players going questing in the Grey Mountains.
Ooh, hey, I can open the doors.
Yep, there's a lot of baddies inside.
Well, I figured.
I know.
I'm not sure, Lady Wakata, what's up with the freestanding obelisks. I mean, it is a very striking element of the architecture here. Outside, I mean. Huh, interesting that we get stalactites right away.
Mm-hmm.
This... I would not have expected this, unfinished roof from the start. The floor, at least, is well paved, although
Dirty.
filthy, right? Which is what you expect.
Some of it could be fallen from the stalactites above.
It could.
But not much, I don't think.
But there's rough stone everywhere. This is very strange.
It's possible it could be unfinished.
Well, no, I mean,
They hadn't actually completed digging out everything yet.
Oh, that it was actually incomplete, the building.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
So the stone that we're standing on looks like it was debris that was deposited in some fashion on an already completed floor.
Yeah, no, the floor is complete. But I'm seeing stalactites everywhere I look. Up ahead, this just seems to devolve into a tunnel. No, a blank wall. With stalagmites growing out of the floor? What are they doing? That's super weird. This has to be an artistic choice. Like, we're just going to leave those stalagmites. Bugs?
I'm seeing bugs on the ground. Looks like cockroaches emanating out of this.
Oh.
I'm guessing it's rancid meat or something on the ground.
There are bugs. I've never seen that before.
Hmm?
Whoa. Huh. Bizarre. So this hallway goes nowhere and ends into an unfinished wall with stalagmites and stalactites. And stalagmites and stalactites in the hallway here too. It's strange because they've not only carved the stone for the walls, but they've decorated it. Like it's covered, it's overlaid with the gold, so that it's shinier and more finished looking than usual, more than just it would be if it were merely smoothed and carved. I mean,
right, like they did a massive gold leaf enterprise on it or something.
Right, and yet at the same time, they've left. It goes nowhere, and they've left all these stalagmites and everything. How very perplexing.
And if there's all these doors of chambers that we can't get into, of course.
Right.
What were they for? Was it a dwelling? Like people lived here?
Well, I wouldn't think so, but it doesn't look anything like what I expected. That is, I expected a big hall because I expected this to be an outlet, you know? Like, now it could be an outpost, so you'd have people living here, or at least near here. The people who are, coming this way to, this area inside the doors would be, right? It would be like the last hotel, right? It'd be the last
Possibly
dwarven homely house before they leave to go out into the wild to, embark on the overland leg of their trade mission.
JJ has a great question.
Wait, which one?
JJ had a question. How long would it take for the stalactites and stalagmites to form if there was a leak in here? I would say on the order of hundreds of years, but we're talking.
It would have to be hundreds of years. I mean, now, they've had hundreds of years, but not that many hundreds of years. These are huge stalagmites and stalactites.
Mm-hmm. This would take like thousands of years, I would imagine.
I would think it would have to take thousands of years.
We're not really seeing any evidence of dripping or water. I mean, there are water places in here, but they're just like a regular underground river kind of dealio. It's not like you can see the stalactites and stalagmites.
Yeah, and there doesn't seem to be anything in here. Just these doors and all these blank hallways.
Yeah, they're for a quest.
How peculiar. And we've got these little goblins. Okay, well seems to go somewhere up there. This is just another blank hallway, right? Yeah, just another blank hallway. See, if this had been like right inside the front door, right? If the front door had been up this hall, up this stairwell to this kind of colonnaded hall with another big set of stairs going up, 2 double stairs going up. Oh yeah, this is just what I would have been looking for. So it took us a while to get to it, but I can see it. So this is the way you get from Moria. It dead ends. Are you serious?
No, there's a ramp up.
There's a door. Where's their ramp?
Over here.
Oh, back the other way. Does it meet up with the other one?
Oh, no.
There's another one up there, vaguely, over there. Does it go around?
Yeah, it's a bit of a warren in here.
It is. I do love the purple crystals, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wish they'd stop setting me on fire. It's a little rude.
Sappers are rude. Yes, they are.
But look, it's me, the lore master, complaining about setting people on fire.
A little bit of irony there, yeah.
A little bit of irony. And now I'm in Sundergrot again?
You've always been in Sundergrot.
I know, but it just appeared on my screen again. Oh, we're outside. Try not to Rivendell this bridge in the dark.
Yep. Also, you want to be careful. You can look down the hall, down the way, and see a little bit down the cliff.
Yeah, I'm trying to see down the cliff. So where are we? Okay, so we're looking down the river there. So that's where we're down this waterfall is where we came in?
Yes.
can't see the bridge from here, but...
Because it's that far down.
Right.
And if you turn around and look up, as you are, there is another bridge up there.
Right. Right, another bridge across.
But again, this bridge has a lot of the same formal, like the wood is not crudely, lashed together or anything.
Right, right. Yeah, I agree. I'm even just trying to look, is there evidence that the dwarves had a bridge there? I guess they must have done.
Yeah, I would imagine they did. And if it's possible, maybe this place was attacked and they threw down the bridges to prevent, enemies from getting further.
Perhaps.
Because that was supposed to be the thing about the Bridge of Khazad-dûm, was it was meant to be a choke point.
Right, right. Yeah, it might be not there anymore because it was designed to be a not very strong bridge. Well, it's certainly no direct path in from Moria, that's for sure.
Nope. So I think this is a little bit further north than Moria. But speaking of Moria and connections to the outside world, as I told you, and the rest of the community may not be aware of, that Standing Stone is working on letting us see the Battle of Azanulbazar.
Yes.
Thank you. And there's going to be some updates that may reflect or change what we're doing in here.
Is it going to be a session play?
No, it's going to be like Mordor Besieged, which is set in the past. So it's like a whole new map of the Dimral Dale based on the battle, but some of the details, scenario, the developer working on it, said that some of those details would be coming to the regular game, to the present.
Huh.
And I apologize for my howling cat.
It kind of seems topical.
Yeah, he crashed my Signum Path class with Dr. Brown, too.
I'm just looking at the bridge that we're on.
Yeah, this one's more solid. This is not a bridge I would expect to go falling down.
Definitely not. Okay, so if this was not a path into Moria, was this then another clan of dwarves? Just like the labyrinthine headquarters of a different clan of dwarves?
Well, part of it, to be fair, is some of these places were created by one of the other clans of dwarves that was created by Standing Stone.
Sure.
So there's a lot of game lore that could inform these questions that I'm hesitant to mention beyond that. But yes, to answer your question in the short term, there is another clan.
Right. What is this purple stuff? This is an ore, is it? Mineable ore? It's not mineable ore? Or is it?
I don't see a name tag on it.
Yeah,
but it uses the same model as the Minas Ithil ore.
Yeah, it looks vaguely like ore. I think it's not right that you catch fire in the area even if you jump over it. It seems to me not fair. Yep. I think it's not a path. I think these are halls, but we have not found anything like
and this is more rough. I mean, there's hardly any of this is finished.
Yeah. There's a very great deal of unfinished stone still. And it seems to be a choice. I mean, I think it's an artistic choice. It's an interesting one, especially because of the contrast with the highly finished and shiny gold.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
We found the upper bridge.
Oh, I done died.
Oops. That
Thank
could get
goodness I've got a
awkward.
free revive.
Yeah, it's okay. Me
Oh, you
too.
got...
Well, yeah, I knew I was not going to be long after here. I'm just going to hang out for a little bit.
I'll be honest, you got further here than I thought you would.
What, especially with me running on ahead down the halls and aggroing everybody in sight?
Okay, we do have a minstrel in the group. Hologrow on Saginaw. Can you res Corey for us, please?
Oh, it's okay. I can revive. I was just waiting for everybody, all the bad guys, to die.
But why spend money to revive when we've got a healer in a group?
Oh, well, it doesn't cost money. Not the first time. It's free the first time. Okay.
And as you can see, we have a Gundabad warrior hanging out by this bridge.
Okay. Well, I was hoping, I think we're out of time. We're not going to find anything like a sort of throne room or anything like that, are we?
I don't believe so. I think we're almost done, but I did see a bridge up above.
Yeah. Whoa. Big fire.
Big fire, little goblin, he died. Oh, I forgot to shield wall you. My bad.
Yeah, no worries. Oh, wow, we have gone quite a ways here, haven't we? Ooh, there's a...
Yes, indeed.
How did I miss the stable master down there? I didn't even see him. Oh, well. Because that would have been handy. Yeah, I mean, this is just another dead end, isn't it? Yes, it is. Yeah, okay. Well,
yeah, a lot of this is just more of the same, pretty much.
It looks like it. It looks like it. Yeah, no, this is clearly a residential area. So therefore, I'm going to say, barring any evidence from within Khazad-dûm itself, which might cause me to revise my opinion.
Yeah, as Hologrow says, they've pretty much seen everything that's in here.
Yeah, I think that the evidence suggests that this is a different clan of dwarves with a rather odd aesthetic.
I want to know where they got all the blue stone from.
Yeah, I wonder that too.
Is it like lapis lazuli or something? But even so, that's a ton of it. Even if it just has an applique on the outside of a...
Agreed. A ton.
As a decoration, just a thin decoration, would still need a ton of it.
Yeah.
Especially knowing that Scarhald exists.
Yeah, so... yeah, so I think this is a different clan, which would have set up... So they could... Because where are we here? Right click. We're up here. So yeah, we're just south of Gundabad. So these would be dwarves who would be trading separately then with the elves of Mirkwood and with the dwarves, or sorry, with the humans.
Right, because one of the things is that each clan has, they're more loosely, they're not like one people. Like if we're talking about, Glorfindel speaking for all elves, saying, "Hey, we're happy to lose, our special rings if it means everybody else doesn't have to deal with Sauron again."
Right.
The dwarves are not like that, and they haven't been seen to be like that.
Mm-hmm.
They're more, each clan is its own autonomous structure, so they would have their own separate trade agreements.
Right.
Definitely. So I wonder which one annoyed the Bjornings enough that the Bjornings charged all dwarves extra tolls.
Right. Yes. Yeah, even Bjorn himself in The Hobbit seems to suggest that he's known other dwarves and considers Thorin and Thorin's family to be more respectable than some of the other dwarves. Interesting. Okay, well, we should let people go. It's getting late. That's I think we've seen what there is to see inside of here. Next time we will go down the other bank of the river and explore the areas down by the junction of the two rivers, and then continue on towards the north.
Congrats for surviving Sundergrot.
Oh, mostly
Many other
surviving.
people didn't.
Yeah, no worries.
Survived.
Well, you guys did a
End
great
up
job.
died in it.
You guys did a great job. Awesome. Thanks everybody for joining me on our field trip, and we will be back for more explorations next week. And continuing on the Council of Elrond, and then continuing in the Wells of Langflood. Thanks everybody. Thanks for joining us, and have a good night. Bye now.
Bye.